Hello everyone. Today I'll be doing a basic, and when I say basic, I mean a very basic tutorial on uh, enemy AI, because it's a really complicated topic, and depending on your project, depending on what you need, you might need a lot. Now, this tutorial is going to be aimed more at people with pretty much none to a little bit of experience in programming in C Sharp, game design, Unity. So if you're an experienced developer and you're wanting a meaningful discussion on advanced artificial intelligence, then this won't be the video for you. But if you are just beginning out and you'd like to, sort of see an example of how you might approach this problem in a smaller scene or, in a more introductory level, then, this will be a useful resource, I think. So first off, my scene is standard. I have got standard assets, the standard textures, everything here you can do yourself and follow along. I will be showing how to make an enemy wander around until the player is in sight of the enemy AI, and then have the enemy chase the player. Health and stuff like that is uh, relatively simple to do, and I can show. I'll do that in a following video, but not quite this one. But just generally wandering around, and if it sees you, it'll chase you. So that's basically the extent of this video. And I will show how to also incorporate some animations into there as well. So you'll change the animation if it sees you, it starts running towards you, change its speed, stuff like that. But that's a little. I don't have those animations, so I'll show you how to do them, but I can't show exactly, right, because I don't have those. For my enemy, I'm going to be creating a capsule, and that'll be our enemy. I'm gonna name him enemy. And this is what we'll be working with today. So to generally explain how this will work is I'm going to show you. I'm going to put a sphere on this enemy. I'm going to blow the sphere up like this, make it big like that, and disable the mesh renderer component like so. Essentially, we're going to have a very wide field of view. What am I talking about? Very wide radius around here. And if the player or whatever comes into this sphere, then we're going to chase the player, right? So how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to need to do some scripting. So I've created a folder called scripts. So I'm going to create a new C# script, and I'm going to call this. Well, we're going to need two scripts, but well, we can do it all in one. And I'm going to call this enemy AI. So I'm going to go ahead and launch this and reload all. Yeah, I was kind of testing around here before I did this, so I didn't mess anything up. And we have the general basic C# script here. If you're very new, the void update, like it tells you, it calls it once per frame. So we're going to be actually using this because we're going to want to be checking once per frame. Is the player in here? So in many ways, this is probably not the best way. I don't like putting it. If I can not put something in the update function, I won't, because obviously it's being checked once per frame, right? So if you have a bunch of logic in your update function, it can get kind of messy and performance can start to drag. And then the void start, which we use for initialization, as it says. So we'll be using both of those today. And so in this, I'm going to create a public array of transforms, which we do like this. I'm going to call it destinations. And then we're going to create a public integer called next destination. Set it to 0. We need to use the nav mesh agent, the navigation mesh, which we'll be doing here in a second. But we need to use that, access that, which I'm just going to call it nav agent. We need to create a public game object for the play. Or do we need to do that? We might not actually need to do that. We'll see. We need to create a public boolean. This is the biggest part of it all. We're going to call this isPlayer visible. And like I said, we want to, when the player comes into this view, we want the player to become visible. So how do we do that? There's a few ways we can do this, and some ways are better than others. The way that I'm going to show you will be great or not great depending on your project. This is just one way to tackle it. But like everything else with code, there's tons of ways to tackle it. So the way that we're going to do it here is I'm going to create a function called onTriggerEnter, and we're going to define the collider. So on trigger enter this collider. And so essentially what this is saying is that, when something enters the collider, and we're going to give it some logic because we don't want just anything entering the collider. We want to make sure that it's our player. So we do that by saying if the game object dot find game object, not objects but object with tag, is tagged as player, then we're just going to set is player visible to false. We're going to do the same thing with down here. We're going to say void on trigger exit collider other. Oops. We're going to give it the same logic. If the game object is of find game object tag. If the game object is tagged as the player, then we want to do something specific. And we're going to set is player visible to false. Whoa, my bad. I meant to set, what am I doing? I am a mess. I meant to set this to true. Alright, so I meant to do that, and that was an accident. So, actually, we're going to need to put this on the actual trigger, but not a problem. I'm just showing you the basics of this, how this would work. Now what we need to do is say what happens if this is true, right? So we've established that if we enter the collider as the player, which, by the way, I didn't mention, but I did tag my player as player, so you're going to want to do that. Go down and tag it as player. You can tag it as whatever you want, right? This is a universal concept in game design. Essentially, if this specific object enters this area, do this, right? You can use this concept everywhere. I believe the concept is called zoning in game design. You might call it something else, whatever, but you enter a specific zone, something happens. You can script a lot with this concept, and it can be quite useful. But anyway, in the void update function, well, actually, in the start function, we need to create an instance of the nav mesh. We need to say that nav agent. We need to create an instance of it. So we need to say get component nav mesh agent. Oops. I almost forgot to do that. Just like so. Now in the update function, we need to say, well, what happens if the player is visible? So the exclamation point means not, right? So if the player is not visible. If is player visible is if the player is not visible. It's kind of hard to say that, right? You can use the exclamation point quite a bit to say if something is not the case, and also if the nav agent, we're going to say if the remaining distance of the nav agent, right, is less than, we'll say, I don't know, 0.4 f, right, the float value, so we'll say that the nav agent we're going to set the distance, set destination, and then we're going to use our destinations that we defined earlier. Next destination dot position, and then we're going to say next destination is equal to next destination plus 1 divided by, right, this is a modulo, so when you divide and then you look at the remainder, not the actual result of the division, not the quotient, right? So you look at the remainder. So that makes sense. The destinations dot length. So essentially saying that the nav mesh agent, we're setting the destination of the nav mesh agent to be the destination of the next destination dot position, right? So, and this will make sense because essentially what we've done, we've created an array of transforms. So wherever we put those transforms, we can have them be empty game objects, right? And we'll set them as waypoints. So it'll go towards them. So our destination is going to be the next destination, the position of the next destination, which will make sense once we do that. And the next destination is also next destination plus 1 divided by the remainder of the destinations.length, right? So, and we say if nav agent dot remaining distance is greater than 0.4 f, then we just set the nav agent speed to 6f. Right. So pretty easy. So if the nav agent dot remaining distance is less than 0.4 to the player, right, then the nav agent speed is going to be 6. Or sorry, yeah, if the player, this is if the player is not visible, right? Essentially, we're just setting the nav agent speed to 6f. Now we need to go down here and say else if, which we're actually saying if to else to this statement, right? Else if the player is visible, so no exclamation point this time. If the player is visible, then we're going to do some maths here. I'm going to say vector 45, vector in 45 dimensions. Wow, that would be pretty instant. Vector 3, and we're going to call this relative direction. The vector 3, relative direction, and we're going to set this equal to the player dot transform dot position. So the transform dot the position of the player minus transform dot position. All right. So if the player is visible, then we're gonna want to subtract the distance between us and the player. So the enemy is going to become, what would that mean? That means the enemy is going to come towards it, right? If we added these two values, then the distance from the player would go away. So that would be an animal or whatever running away. But we're subtracting the distance between those two. So our object's going to go towards the player, right? So then we need to say the nav agent dot set destination. We're going to say that the destination is the player dot transform dot position minus the relative direction that we assigned earlier, dot normalize, which, right, so, and then we're going to multiply this by 2. Let's just do 2.03, just because why not? 2.043. All right. And then we'll give it a little bit of logic here as well. We'll say if the nav agent dot remaining distance is greater than 0.4f, then we are going to set the nav, the nav agent dot speed to 12f, so it's going to go a lot faster. It's going to run towards our player. So this is a basic AI just written right here, right? Just basic artificial intelligence. Now we can also say things like, so for animation, okay, first off, let me show you what this looks like. Let's go ahead and save our scene. I'm going to go ahead and put this script on the enemy. So here's where we have our destinations, right? Destinations is our transform, our array of transforms. So we're going to, what I can do here is I can say create an empty game object, and I'll just name it destinations. And then we're going to create, let's see, 1, 2, 3, and then 4. So and we'll put these, where are these exactly? Put these right here. Put 1 here. And then, where's the other one? 1 all the way over here. You can play around with this, you know, wherever you want. These are the waypoints, wherever you want your AI to walk around at. Put the other one over. So it's going to really wander around. Alright, so, and then we're going to put the other one just, I don't know, over here somewhere, whatever. You can have fun with this. Do this on your own. It's just showing you how to do this. Have fun and do this on your own. This isn't actually going to do anything right now because we need to go to our navigation. You can go to this by going to Window and Navigation. Now we need to bake the nav mesh. So just go ahead and hit bake, and it'll show you the nav mesh once it's baked it. You can click to see that it'll show you. And like, you know, you can change this to the max slope. So if I had some hills here or some rocks, you can change it so that it won't actually, your nav agent won't actually go up a certain slope if you don't want it to or whatever. Then we gotta go to the enemy and add a nav mesh agent. Oh, I guess I already had it there. Well, just like so. So I'm gonna go here. I actually should add that agent before you bake. I'm gonna bake that real quick. I'm gonna enter into the scene. See what my player or my enemy is. Where's my enemy? There you are. Oh, he's not moving. Index is out of range because I totally forgot to. Yeah, see, our destination is a size, an array, so it's going to ask us for how much we want. We have 4, so I'm going to go ahead and put the first transform here. Right? the second transform, you start counting at 0 in programming, so just like so. We'll set the next destination to 1. Oh, we also need to assign the FPS controller to our player like that. So when the isPlayerVisible is not visible, right, it's just roaming around. It's just hanging out. When it is visible, it's going, oh, it's actually pushing, oh, I forgot to mark this as is trigger. So it was pushing our game object, or our player, out of the way. So right now it's just going toward, right, so if the, so it's right now it's going to all the waypoints. It's just going to hang, it's just going to keep going. It's walking around, right, and with animations, this could look really cool. So it's just walking around, hanging out. You can change the nav mesh, or sorry, you can change the nav agent speed to whatever you like, you know. Make it, maybe you can even, using the same logic that we already did, you can make them stop every now and then to, you know, cough or whatever. And then, but all of a sudden, like, if I were to hijack this and say, is player visible? Yeah, player's visible, right? Then then the distance between the player and him is, he's going to go towards the player, right? So if I say the player's not visible, he's just going to go along his merry way. So if I was wandering around and I went into this collider, this would become true, and he says, hey, you're visible. Now, that's, like I said, this is very basic, and you know, this will work in lower level projects, stuff like that, but it's not going to work in high level projects like that. So I'd like to go over other things. Like, for instance, I'd like to go over some attacks and how you can, you know, have health on the player and the enemy and all that. But this video's gone a bit long already, so I'll end it there. I do want to show you how you can maybe do some animations. So for instance, right here, we could say another if statement, right? We could say that if the agent, nav agent dot remaining distance is greater than 0.4f, then we can say get component, and then in here we would say animation. So get an animation dot play. And then right here, we would just, inside of these brackets, we would put an animation, right? So in this case, the player's not visible, so it's just going from one thing to one thing. If we had an animation called, you know, casually walking, right, then it would play that animation while he's doing that, right? And then here, we could even write, and so like down here, we do the same thing. If we just copy and paste this logic here, we can do this down here as well. Say, what was I looking at? Yeah, we could just say copy this right here, and then say if it is, yeah, if it's greater than, like, okay, cool. And then say we'll have one called, an animation called run fast, or fast running. So if you had an animation for that, and then it would be, you'd be fast running. So the animation would shift and change based on, you know, what is going on in the game. So that's a general introduction to some very, very basic AI. I hope this helps, and I will see you in the next video.